The phone call that shattered Amara Williams's world came at the worst possible moment. 6,000 miles away in a Dubai hotel room, minutes after she'd closed the biggest deal of her career. Her husband Robert's voice was cold, mechanical. "I'm leaving you, Amara. I've sold the house. Jessica and I are getting married next month." 8 years of marriage, gone in 30 seconds. But what Amara discovered next would make that betrayal seem like child's play. As she frantically checked their joint bank accounts from her laptop, zeros stared back at her. Robert had cleaned them out. $180,000 vanished, leaving just enough to avoid fraud alerts. The house they'd lovingly renovated sold 3 days ago for exactly what they owed, despite $190,000 in equity. The mathematical impossibility hit her like ice water. Robert had either sold drastically under market value, or he'd been planning this destruction for months. Flying back to Chicago, Amara spent 14 hours building her defense strategy. By the time she landed at O'Hare, she had a lawyer, a financial advisor, and a plan. What she didn't have was the full scope of Robert's betrayal. Her sister Nina was waiting with controlled fury. "I drove by the house," she said carefully. "There's a moving truck and a blonde woman directing movers like she owns the place." Jessica, the name that would haunt Amara's investigation. At Patricia Chin's law office, the pieces began forming a horrifying picture. The house sale documents bore Amara's signature, except she'd never signed them. She was in client meetings all day before her Dubai flight, with no time for real estate transactions. Forgery, the first felony in what would become a federal case. Robert's arrogance at their cafe meeting revealed everything Amara needed to know about the man she'd married. He slid a settlement offer across the table, $25,000 for an 8-year marriage. "It's generous considering you contributed nothing to our financial success," he said with casual cruelty. When Patricia mentioned the forged deed, Robert's confident mask flickered, but his response chilled Amara to the bone. "I have resources. I have connections. You're a woman scorned trying to take revenge. How do you think that's going to look in court?" This wasn't the man she'd married. This was a predator who'd been wearing her husband's face for years. Private investigator Marcus Thompson's findings shattered any remaining illusions. The affair with Jessica Morrison had lasted 10 months, but their business partnership stretched back 18 months. Morrison Williams Holdings, he'd named their shell company after both women in his life. The scheme was breathtakingly elaborate. They'd bought and flipped properties using money from Amara's joint accounts, sold them under market value through Jessica's real estate connections, and skimmed profits into offshore accounts. 3 properties, $3 million moved, years of planning. But Marcus's most devastating discovery was yet to come. Jessica Morrison was married to a finance executive named David who traveled frequently and had no idea his wife was planning to marry another man. Robert's perfect plan was built on lies within lies. The FBI had been watching Morrison Williams Holdings for months. When Agent Maria Rodriguez interviewed Amara, the scope of the conspiracy became clear. $800,000 in unreported income, forged loan documents in Amara's name, and a systematic scheme to destroy her financially while funding Robert's escape to a non-extradition country. He'd applied for a passport under a false name, transferred money to Cayman Islands accounts. For 2 years, while Amara worked 60-hour weeks building their future, Robert had been methodically planning her destruction. The betrayal cut deeper than infidelity. This was attempted financial murder. Robert's arrest came as Jessica's husband filed for divorce, her real estate license was suspended, and federal charges rained down. But Robert still had one more card to play. From prison, he tried to flip the script. His appeal claimed Jessica had manipulated him, that he was as much a victim as Amara. The FBI's recorded phone calls from prison told a different story. Robert recruiting other inmates, teaching fraud techniques, expanding his criminal network. At the appeals hearing, Judge Margaret Foster wasn't buying it. "You have shown no genuine remorse," she told Robert before adding 2 years to his sentence. 9 years total for the man who'd tried to erase his wife's existence. Working with the FBI, Amara helped dismantle Robert's entire operation. 12 men across 3 states, $5 million of damages, all following Robert's playbook. Target successful, trusting women, manipulate financial decisions, steal systematically while planning escape. Jessica Morrison, facing death threats from other network members, entered witness protection. Her testimony helped convict 7 additional perpetrators. But the real victory wasn't Robert's imprisonment. It was what Amara built from the ashes. Phoenix Rising, the non-profit organization Amara founded from the wreckage of her marriage, became a beacon for women facing similar betrayals. Rebuild Financial Safety grew from a small office in downtown Chicago to a national organization with chapters in 12 states, each one dedicated to helping women recognize and prevent domestic financial abuse. The work was more than professional. It was personal redemption transformed into public service. Every woman who called their hotline, every victim who attended their seminars, every success story represented not just individual healing, but systemic change. The fraud techniques Robert had perfected were now being taught to women as warning signs to recognize and avoid. Amara's speaking engagements drew packed auditoriums, her story resonating with audiences who saw their own vulnerabilities reflected in her experience. The marketing executive who had once sold products now sold something more valuable: the knowledge that financial abuse was preventable, that trust could be rebuilt, and that survival was not just possible but could become a foundation for helping others. Marcus Thompson's transition from private investigator to nonprofit security director represented more than a career change. It was the foundation of a partnership built on equality and shared purpose. Their relationship developed with the careful attention of 2 people who understood that trust was not given blindly but earned through consistent action and proven character. When Marcus proposed on the shores of Lake Michigan 2 years after that devastating phone call in Dubai, his words captured the transformation that had defined Amara's journey. "I'm not asking you to forget your past or pretend that it didn't happen. I'm asking you to build a future with me as equals, as partners." The ring on her finger represented more than love. It symbolized the victory of someone who had refused to be defined by another person's betrayal. 5 years after that phone call in Dubai, Amara stood before another packed auditorium, this time at Harvard Business School, delivering a keynote address on financial fraud prevention. The audience included future business leaders, law enforcement officials, and survivors of financial abuse, all united in their commitment to preventing the crimes that had once nearly destroyed her. "The most important thing to remember," she told the audience, "is that financial abuse is rarely about money. It's about power and control. The money is just the weapon they use to maintain that control." After the lecture, a young woman approached with the familiar look of someone recognizing their own vulnerability in Amara's story. "Ms. Williams, I think my husband might be stealing from me. What should I do?" The conversation that followed was the reason Amara had built her organization, written her book, and transformed her trauma into a tool for helping others. Every woman she helped represented a victory not just over Robert's specific crimes, but over the broader culture that had allowed his network to operate. Robert remained in federal prison, his appeals exhausted, his criminal empire dismantled. According to Agent Rodriguez, he had become something of a pariah among inmates, his attempts to recruit new followers earning him enemies rather than disciples. The man who had once commanded respect through wealth and manipulation now faced the consequences of his actions in the most direct way possible. Jessica Morrison had disappeared into the witness protection program, her real estate career over, her marriages destroyed, her identity erased and reconstructed by federal authorities. Whether she had found genuine redemption or simply another form of survival remained unknown, but her cooperation had prevented other women from suffering similar betrayals. The house where Amara and Robert had planned to grow old together had been sold again, this time to a young family with children who filled the rooms with laughter and hope. Driving past it one evening with Marcus, Amara felt no sadness for the life that had been stolen from her, only gratitude for the life she had built from its ashes. Epilogue: Love Beyond Destruction. The wedding reception took place in the same downtown Chicago hotel where Amara had once attended corporate functions with Robert. But the symbolism was intentional, reclaiming a space that held painful memories and transforming it into the foundation of new joy. The guest list included not just family and friends, but women whose lives had been touched by her organization, survivors who had become advocates, victims who had become victors. Marcus's vows captured the essence of what they had built together. I promise to be your partner in all things, to support your independence while building our interdependence, and to prove every day that love is not about possession, but about empowerment. The wedding gifts included donations to rebuild financial safety from couples who understood that some celebrations were more meaningful when they served others. The honeymoon would be postponed by 3 months, while Amara testified in the final prosecutions of Robert's network, but neither she nor Marcus minded. Their real honeymoon had been the 2 years of building trust, respect, and a shared commitment to justice. As they danced to their first song as husband and wife, Amara thought about the woman she had been in that Dubai hotel room. Devastated, confused, blaming herself for the destruction of her marriage. That woman had believed her worth was tied to her husband's approval, her security dependent on his honesty, her future contingent on his plans. The woman she had become understood that her worth came from within, her security from her own strength and intelligence, and her future from her own choices. Love was not something to be conquered or controlled, but something to be shared between equals who chose each other every day. Robert had tried to break her by stealing her money, her home, and her trust. Instead, he had revealed reserves of strength she hadn't known she possessed. His betrayal had been intended to destroy her life, but it had instead liberated her to build the life she was meant to live. The game Robert had started with that phone call in Dubai was finally over. But his most devastating miscalculation wasn't underestimating Amar's intelligence or resilience. It was failing to understand that some victories are measured not by what you take from others, but by what you build from what they tried to take from you. Love beyond color, indeed. Love beyond the black and white of betrayal and revenge, colored instead by the infinite spectrum of growth, healing, and the choice to transform pain into purpose. In the end, that was the sweetest victory of all.